Good morning, Mr. Kanellakos. My name is Rob Kittredge, and I'm counsel for the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, and I just have a couple of questions for you, and I want to start my stopwatch because I have a very limited amount of time granted to me here. I understand that approximately 34 vehicles were towed in the zone between January 28th and February 14th, and some limited amount of towing took place outside of the zone during the same period. Does that sound about right to you?
It sounds right, yeah.
All right. To your knowledge, none of those tow trucks were damaged by protesters. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of any damage, but I believe they were light vehicles that were being towed.
Sure. To your knowledge, none of the tow truck operators were assaulted by protesters. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of any, no.
All right. Some parking tickets were issued to illegally parked protest vehicles during the same time period. To your knowledge, none of the bylaw enforcement or police officers issuing these tickets were assaulted by protesters, were they?
I think there was one incident where they were, what's the word, surrounded, but I'm not aware of any other incidents. That's better put to the police. I wasn't aware of
And they were simply surrounded and not assaulted?
I don't know the details.
Okay, you're not personally aware of that incident. All right. You mentioned earlier that you felt that ticketing alone would not get rid of all the vehicles, that if all the ticketed vehicle owners simply didn't care about tickets and no towing was taking place, then no trucks would move. Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
Well, I'll grant you that ticketing alone might not have moved every single one of the illegally parked vehicles. Did it ever occur to you that mounting ticket costs might have motivated at least some of the owners of illegally parked vehicles to voluntarily move?
That's a possibility, but you wouldn't move everybody.
Sure. And the knowledge that tickets were being issued to illegally parked vehicles on a daily or even hourly basis might have kept some vehicles from traveling to Ottawa to join the protests. Wouldn't you agree?
That's speculation. I'm not speculating on that.
Fair enough. Regarding ticketing and towing outside of the red zone, you mentioned that the city was concerned that they would get the wrong people, and I understood that to mean that there was a concern that Ottawa residents might be boiled in and ticketed and towed along with the protest vehicles.
That was a consideration, yes.
And wouldn't the city have had authority to to ticket and tow illegally parked vehicles, whether they were part of the protests or not?
Well, we don't normally tow illegally parked vehicles on city streets. I mean, there's a certain set of circumstances when a vehicle will be towed. So, no.
But I mean, under these circumstances, where the city was being brought.
Well, it depends where the vehicles were. If we're talking the Byward Market, there were still a mix of vehicles, protest vehicles and resident vehicles in the Byward Market, based on the nature of how many people live in that area. So you can't differentiate easily whose is whose.
But the city would have had the authority to ticket and tow vehicles regardless of whether they were involved in the protests or not. Is that correct?
We have the authority to ticket and tow, yes.
All right, thank you. You indicated that the city has a number of what you called standing offer towing contractors, but that they were all unwilling to tow protest vehicles. You remember saying that?
That's correct.
Did the city try and negotiate with these standing offer towing contractors?
I don't know what the extent of the discussion. I just know that I had asked that they all be called and asked, so those phone calls were made. What transpired I don't operate at that level. But what transpired in individual discussions with tow truck operators, I don't know.
So you instructed your people to call the tow truck operators and simply ask if they would help tow the trucks?
If they'd be made available.
Did you instruct your people to offer to cover any damage to the standing offer contractors towing vehicles?
I didn't instruct that specifically, no.
Did you instruct your people to make any offers to increase compensation to standing offer towing contractors once it became clear that they weren't willing to help?
I didn't give specific directions to that level. That's not the level I operate in.
Sure, but don't you think it might have made a difference to increase compensation to tow truck operators?
Well, based on the reasons I outlined why they didn't want to do it, that they were telling us, I don't know. Again, that's speculation.
As I recall, you mentioned that they were concerned about damage to their trucks. They were concerned about their safety. They were concerned about, and some of them were sympathetic to the protesters. Essentially,
yes.
Is that a fair characterization?
Well, there were 4 areas, yes.
So, if they're concerned about damage to their trucks, I would think that offering to compensate them for damage.
Even if maybe so, but I would argue that, and I shouldn't say that. I would submit to in my own opinion, that maybe damage to a truck, even though they're compensated, still isn't worth the damage to your truck. They're very expensive trucks. And then you start getting into a whole other situation about the compensation for that. So they had their own reasons, and I don't know if our people offered them anything else outside of the standing offer contract. I didn't instruct that. I just instructed to try and get tow trucks retained and make them available for us.
All right, well, we've just ticked over my 5 minutes, so thank you very much. Those are my questions.